In the many years that I have been privileged to be in ministry, I've noticed three different ways in which people tend to think of the way in which God looks at us or reaches out to us. One of those ways is as a severe judge, making sure that we get our just deserts, that we get punished for all the things that we do wrong. There are elements in the Bible that would support such a view, but did you notice in the first lesson today where God quite correctly gets angry at the things that the people were doing still? At the last minute, God says, no, I can't punish in that kind of way. The second way, very prevalent today, I think, in which people tend to look at God is as someone removed, as someone distant. God is up in heaven somewhere, and we don't really have that much of a connection with God, and as far as we're concerned, that's just as good. He can stay up there and we'll stay down here. Both of those ways of looking at God are ways that Jesus over and over again challenged, because he was presenting a third understanding of God. He presents it this way in the parables that we just read. Look at the shepherd who has 100 sheep, and even though he loses just one, spends the whole day looking for it. And when he finds it, he really goes over the top then in what he does, bringing it back to his house, inviting in all his friends and relatives, and saying, rejoice with me that I've found the sheep. It's definitely over the top, but Jesus is using that to make the point of the way in which God is that deeply concerned about every one of us and looking for the good for every one of us. And then the same issue in the woman who loses just one coin. Maybe it was an expensive coin, maybe not, but that's not really the point in what Jesus is saying. It's that, again, she spends the whole day sweeping and cleaning and looking until she finds it. The way in which God, in the great love that God has for us, continues to reach out to us, continues to search for us in whatever way we might happen to be lost. And then that very famous parable that we're all familiar with of the two brothers. I have to admit I was laughing a bit to myself, having an older brother and a younger brother standing on either side of me when we were reading that particular passage. But did you notice with the older brother, when he gets upset, and understandably, that it seems that his younger brother is getting away with everything, and he won't go into the house, the father doesn't simply stay in the house and say, okay, if that's the way you feel, stay out there. He goes out to him. He pleads with him. He reaches out to him. I love you just as much as I love your younger brother. I want you to be part of this family experience. And did you notice with the younger brother, initially when he goes off, the father doesn't race after him. He leaves him free. He leaves him to make the decisions even though he knows they're going to be bad ones. But he's always waiting. He's always looking for him to come back. Did you notice the way Jesus tells the parable? The father sees the younger son at a distance. That means he wasn't surprised by his coming back. He, it seems, was sitting up on a hill somewhere outside the farm, waiting, praying, hoping that his son would finally come to his senses and come back. And when he does, he races out to meet him and to embrace him. Again, that is the way Jesus is saying God deals with us, wanting only what is best for us, reaching out to come after us when we're heading in the wrong direction. Reading these parables might invite us to think a bit about our own experience. What are the ways in your life and mine in which perhaps we really were heading off in a wrong direction, but God pulled us back? I think for myself, many years ago in college, that I had felt some call to become a priest, but I was really trying to push that off. I was definitely trying to run away from that because I was certainly not looking forward to a life of celibacy. But God wouldn't put off. God wouldn't stop seeking to embrace. Well, look at the way in which so many young people today love one another, but just can't commit to marriage, can't make that final step. And yet, God reaches out to them, trying to confirm their love, trying to empower their love, bringing them to the point where they can take that significant step of making that commitment to one another. Or it may be a serious sinfulness that we've gotten ourselves involved in and don't know how to get out of. Once again, God is not threatening us, but God is seeking to relieve us from that, to bring us back into a life of deeper love, of deeper goodness. That's the God that Jesus preached. That's the God that Jesus wants us more and more to come to know and to return that love. And Jesus calls us as his followers then to be people ourselves who can extend his outreach to others, who can be people who, for people we know, people in our family, can be vehicles for them to accept the outreach of God. Again, though, we need to remember the father and the younger son. Sometimes we can make a mistake when someone whom we love is involved in something wrong, of coming down on them so hard, of constantly being at them all the time, that we actually push them in the wrong direction. Part of wisdom, part of what the Holy Spirit gives us, is knowing when to challenge, when to address, and when to step back, simply by our own example and by our own prayer to welcome the person back. I'd like to suggest a poem that you might want to read, because I think it expresses the same thing that Jesus is expressing in these parables. It's called The Hound of Heaven. You can find it online. The poet is Francis Thompson. Francis, a man, Thompson. It's almost 100 years old now. And it may at first seem somewhat blasphemous to refer to Jesus as a dog. But the import of the poem is just that. Like the bloodhound, Jesus is not going to let us go, not going to threaten us the way a bloodhound might, but continuing to come after us, no matter where we try to flee from him. He's not going to bring himself out of our lives, but constantly follow us to bring us back, to bring us into deeper love, to bring us into deeper goodness. And so we come now to the Lord's table once again, to share in the mystery of his death and resurrection, to share his own body and blood, trusting that he will never let us go, trusting that he will always be there for us, trusting that even in the midst of whatever ways we get lost, his call, his love will always welcome us back.